everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm actually going to be bringing you a book review, and it's been one I've really wanted to do but wasn't really sure how to do. And this review is for All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven. This book came out on January 6th. My copy here is an ARC, so I actually read it a little before it released, and as you can see, I loved it. I posted flabbed the heck out of it. All the Bright Places was being pitched as a good cross between The Fault in Our Stars and Eleanor and Park, and would obviously appeal to fans of both of those novels. This was a pretty big release for Random House. There was a lot of hype surrounding it when it came out because it had already been optioned for a movie and they have already cast their female lead with Ellie Fanning. I do not believe they have cast the male lead yet, although the author has said she always imagined a slightly younger Nicholas Hoult playing the male lead, and now I will forever see Nicholas Hoult as the male lead. Anyway, the story. This book tells the story of two teenagers, Violet and Finch, who meet on the top of their school's bell tower where they are both there contemplating suicide. The beautiful thing of what happens in the beginning is that neither of them obviously jump off, and you're not really sure who's saving who from what at that point. You alternate perspectives, you read both Finch and Violet throughout the novel, and you watch them grow closer and you watch their relationship develop. I don't want to say too much else for fear of spoilers, but I will say this is a book for which you're going to want some tissues, especially by the end. There's some stuff that happens that makes you need tissues. I loved this book for the characters. I loved both Theodore Finch and Violet Markey. I think I was a little closer to Finch than I was to Violet, which is interesting because a lot of people have said they've connected more to Violet and that they weren't really sure they liked Finch at first. I actually really connected with Finch kind of from the get-go. I thought he was a fascinating perspective to read, and I was always looking forward to his chapters. That being said, I did also really like Violet's chapters as well, and she grows so much throughout this novel. It was really wonderful to see. One of the reasons I think this book is so powerful and why a lot of people have really been praising it is because it tackles the very tough topic of mental illness in teens. Both Finch and Violet are clearly suffering from certain things and different things, but the biggest thing that gets brought up is bipolar disorder. I won't say which of the characters actually suffers from bipolar disorder, though I think as you read it, it's pretty easy to see which one is. But I will say, just sort of as a background to it, bipolar disorder, it's also known as bipolar affective disorder and was more commonly known, or originally known as manic depression. It's a mental disorder that's characterized by periods of extreme elated moods, often called mania, and very severe periods of depression. The mania can actually even involve things such as psychosis, and it really depends on severity. And the same thing applies to the depression. It can be just like crying, just negative outlook, or it can be really extreme and there's risk of suicide. And one of the big things that really occurs with this, like with other things of mental health, is you have common associations with things like anxiety disorder, there's oftentimes drug misuse, high risk of self-harm. There's a lot that we do and do not know about bipolar disorder, but it is an extremely dangerous mental disorder that, if not caught and treated, can have some very disastrous consequences to the person who suffers from it. All of these post-it markings are either where I identified with a character or where there was a highlight of this person's bipolar disorder from which they're suffering, and oftentimes these overlapped. Actually, probably about 90% of the time these overlapped, and that was actually a little scary when I read the book. But I will say this, I myself do not suffer from bipolar disorder. I have had several friends or people whom I know who have suffered from it, and it is scary when you try to help or you don't really know how, and maybe you think that there's really nothing you can do. But I will say I do not suffer from bipolar disorder. I do, however, kind of real talk here, suffer from a kind of funky cocktail of anxiety and depression and ADHD. And so when the character who has bipolar swings between mania and depression, yeah, I connect with that because I can have very similar experiences. It's not the same thing, but it's often very similar. Dealing with mental disorder in teens is something that some books have tried to do, and depression is often one that's significantly highlighted all the time because it's really common among teenagers, and it's something, you know, that oftentimes isn't really dealt with real well. But Jennifer Niven does this in a way that's so brutal and beautiful and so human. That's what makes this book stand out so much from other books that I've read that deal with mental disorders or mental disorders in young adults and in teens. I think she did something in here that I hadn't experienced. This book is the best book I have read in 2015 so far, and it's phenomenal. I know it's gotten a lot of hype, and I know a lot of people got it, whether or not they've actually read it yet. I can't say for certain, but it is out, and I do highly recommend going to pick it up, because as much as they say this book is for fans of Fault in Our Stars and Eleanor Park, I liked this book more than both of those combined. There's something about the characters that makes them so real and so wonderful. The story is beautiful and heartbreaking and so beautifully human, and the writing is astonishing, and you will fall in love and have your heart broken, and you'll realize that this is kind of like what life is. I mean, this book isn't perfect. I'm not holding it up on like a pedestal and a paragon, but humans aren't perfect. Nobody's perfect. Everybody is messed up and broken, but there's all this beauty and these bright things that you can find in the world, even in the midst of all that darkness. And as one of the characters says, I am in pieces, and I think oftentimes we all feel like that, but like this book points out, there's always something beautiful in the world, even if it's not beautiful to something else. You know, it's just being able to try and deal with everything that's broken and dark and finding all the bright places. But that's it for me today, you guys, and so until next time, cheers.